Wow. So what all are the major biases? Though I know few, but I would like to hear from you.
Um, See, major biases,
Especially in corporates.
yeah. Um, so see, the thing is,
Or the kind of factors which create biases in the corporate world.
so maybe I'll give you an example also so that I can explain it in a better way. So for example, when an interview is getting conducted, okay, the interviewer, if the interviewer's intent is to show off their knowledge, rather than letting the candidate speak, screening the candidate, understanding what the candidate knows, now see where it's going. So the interview turns out to be a setup where the interviewer is just showing off their knowledge, being rude, invalidating the existence of the candidate, and that is how the overall interview goes. And eventually what happens then, the candidate is not selected, even if the candidate could be competent, also suitable for that position. Or let's say the candidate comes from North India, where the interviewer is from the South India. So the interviewer, no, if I hire somebody from South India, it will be better for me, I'll be able to connect.
Regional biases.
So all I'm saying is, I'm not tagging any particular bias. I'm saying it is about every individuals have these traits.
True.
So I might have similar traits also, may not be in this particular context, but maybe in some other context.
Right.
That is where what happens more often than not, privileged individuals who have been just raised in a very privileged setup, who have studied in very big multinational institutions, and that has got suddenly ventured into corporates and all. So that is where, when you have not seen these struggles, which might not be just about financial struggles, unless you have empathy within you, unless you have ability to understand the other person, you form sudden judgments, whether it is about that person's competency, whether it's about that person's caliber, potential, and then that judgment leads to various other factors.
True.
And not necessarily it can happen in the interview setup.
Of course.
It can happen also within the corporate setup also, once the candidate is in.
Yeah.
And that is why it is very important that regardless of which hierarchy you are sitting at, regardless of which technology you are working on, regardless of which region you are sitting in, especially leaders have to have empathy. And leaders need to speak about empathy. Leaders need to celebrate empathy. They need to ensure they bring that word up in every town hall, every conversation, every engagement, because then it becomes a norm.
Right.
And when I say empathy, I am ensuring that it's not just about LGBTI+, it is about all other aspects also.
Of course.
So that is why empathy is something which I see corporates really need to reflect upon, because
it is required.
Yes, and that is where maybe trainings around empathy, conversations around empathy needs to be mainstream in corporate, because you can't make it all about insecurity, you can't make it all about a rat race, you can't make it all about going to the next level. It has to be about empathy, regardless of the level that you are.
Right. As you said, acceptance. What I feel, people, if we accept that yes, we have biases, half of the problem will resolve.
Yeah.
Everybody is
True,
having
very
biases,
true.
and the more just we have to more aware about those biases, I think this will be very helpful.
And be aware and try to address those biases.
Yeah.
Like, somebody might say, oh, I know I have biases, but that's okay. No. You have crossed one level, now get to the next level, address it. Because, you will see this behavioral pattern also.
Okay.
It's like giving a leeway to yourself by saying, oh, I know. Like, for example, I know I am like this, I know I am rude, but that's okay. No, you're rude. You need to address it,
You need some help.
You are short tempered. I mean, like in meetings, you scream and shout. I know, but that's how I lead. No. You need to address it, you need to fix it.
Correct.
That's how you know now you have biases, what you are doing to rise above them, what you are doing to
Alright.
fix them. That is
Right.
also important.
Right. Have you ever faced any kind of discrimination at workplace or kind of a biases?
So, like I said, so people, I mean, even though they know the term, they don't know the nitty gritties of it because they have not been exposed, or maybe they have exposed to the caricaturish, portrayal which has been not aligned with the mainstream societal norms. That is where they struggle to accept me even as a human. Like, I'm not saying all of them,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
maybe even if I would have been in their place, I would have gone through similar struggle because, again, I said privileged background where you have not been exposed, maybe only the term and which you perceive to be an alien term, but an individual is sitting next to you, and that is where there is this struggle of, what is going on,
True.
accepting it. And then once then maybe you have accepted the person as a human, then maybe a little bit of struggle around the competency and potential, which we discussed briefly.
Right.
So, but then at the same time, I would also mention this point that I have been blessed or have been fortunate enough to have amazing allies around me also.
Wow.
Because I don't think without these allies who became enablers in my journey, I would have reached where I have reached.
Wow.
Because, as you can see, the heteronormative population is too much around you. So, unless then you have these allies which you can lean on, things are not going to be, falling in place the way you want.
What I feel, sometimes there are kind of factors not only about discrimination, even biases, or maybe seeing things differently, of course, not always internal, it may be external as well. So, I think one should understand and accept, but see, acceptance is one, but helping, for example, any 20-year-old student who's passing out from the college, carrying any kind of a doubt, they're taking random decisions about their life, killing themselves, anything. So it's kind of these kind of behavior, don't you think so this has to be addressed in the society?
Um, See, my honest take on it is capitalism is responsible to that to a great extent. Meaning, some capitalistic honcho launches a platform where people can just create videos for a couple of seconds and seek validation through the likes that video receives.
Yeah.
And it's both ways. I mean, the videos are not necessarily about good things. The videos are also about obnoxious things. The videos are also about vicious, weird things. But they are also getting likes. And in the times that we are living in today, for the engagement part of it, people are intentionally creating content where there are negative comments.
Actually.
Where there are not encouraging positive comments, and then they go on various platforms and say, but your negativity is giving me engagement, is making me famous. These are the times we are living in, and there is one very good Netflix documentary which was there during pandemic. I forgot the name, Social Dilemma,
Yeah.
right? So today we literally are lab rats. We are just sitting surrounded by propaganda. I mean, yes, we are exposed to information, but that exposure is controlled by, powerful entities, and that is why what you are being served in your plate, you don't know whether it's really true, it's
Yeah.
proper, especially when there are elections and something like that is happening. The information that is being served to you, you don't know whether it's genuine or not.
True.
And how will you validate it?
Yeah.
Because there is this left wing and right wing and everything, and equally everybody is running their propaganda.
Right.
So that is where I would say the generation in these times now, Gen Z, Alpha, we have made significant progress in terms of technology, access to information and all, but that has also led us into this world where you don't know what is true, what is not. True. You don't know what to believe in, what not. You don't know at what moment you are falling prey to somebody's propaganda.
Right.
And these are very dangerous times on that front.
I know. I agree.
And
How
that
to
is
deal
why,
with that?
sorry?
How to deal with that?
How to deal with that? Such a difficult question.
If
It is a
you-
difficult, very difficult question. How to deal with it? Because how to
Your
deal.
expressions were very cute. Let it be. Let's talk about diversity, which we were talking about, since biases and everything. But what I feel, companies like manufacturing and pharmaceutical, I'm not, commenting on any particular industry, but yes, these kind of industries are facing challenges to meet that diversity ratio, which is like not lesser than 5% or 6%. Similarly, on a IT side, it is more than 34%. I understand infrastructure, they're kind of working, but India 2024, we are sitting at this time and we are not even able to touch the 5% of diversity. And today we are talking about LGBTQ. And then how, don't you think so? We are running too much behind, and what kind of efforts, sincere efforts, will required by the industries? What kind of infra they should prepare so that diversity comes in the picture, as well as this LGBTQ term comes in the picture for corporate, and the real diversity will start.
See, now the problem is deeper. I mean, we can't simply look at the surface. We need to scratch the surface.
Yeah.
So if you see the societal fabric that we have, I mean, even today, just barring couple of exceptions in big cities, how a typical marital setup works. In a typical marital setup, the household expectations are from women.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying men are responsible for it. Even women are equally responsible for it.
Yeah.
I mean, mother-in-law expecting those things from the daughter-in-law, saying, we can use certain Hindi dialogues, right? So mother-in-law saying, अब तक इसने बाहर का ही खाना खाया है, अब तो इसको घर का खाना मिले. So that is why getting her son married off and constantly using those lines. Yeah. Even we see that in movies, right? Doesn't matter whether they're using it for the humor quotient, but this is the mindset which is very much prevalent around us, where that particular woman in a marital setup needs to take care of the in-laws, need to take care of the family, maids, house helps, cooks, everything. Now, in that kind of expectational world, how can she work for 10 hours and 12 hours and put herself, compete with a privileged gender who is giving 14% and 15% at work, because maybe he doesn't have to do anything else at home, everything else is taken care of, right? And that is where then the woman will choose something where it becomes a secondary kind of income. It becomes something where she doesn't have to give her 100%. She can give, let's say, 80% to her home, 20% to something to make that extra money, where her husband can buy a Creta over a Nexon. 3 BHK over 2 BHK. And that is why then they opt out for options which can be managed along with taking care of all these responsibilities. And that is why then where there is work from home available permanently, where the working hours are less, where let's say there are multiple flexibility factors, various flexibility factors, where nobody is expecting them to deliver, and like they're not questioned constantly, and nobody's pushing them to get promoted and all that. They lean on these options.
Right.
And that is why unless we address the bigger problem, just focusing on the diversity numbers and why are we not meeting the targets and all, this bigger problem need to be addressed. And I'm not saying it's not getting addressed.
Yeah.
It is, but it's a journey.
Yeah.
It will take some time, because of course I have now these male friends who help their wives, and they also take immense pride in it. It's not like something they're doing anything out of the world. They understand that unless they also help her, it is going to be difficult for her also to do justice to her job. So the numbers are less, the quantity is less, but definitely things are changing, and that is where I might need to put the onus on men also. They need to come forward and talk about these things. It is not about there is no attack on their egos. They need to come forward and talk about, create reels how you are helping your wives, create reels how you love cooking, create reels how you have embraced your emotions, how you are equally taking the load at home. Once we'll see these celebrations around us, definitely that will push the mothers-in-law to change their mindsets also. It is
And
very required.
even apart from mother-in-law or anybody in the family, women herself,
Yeah.
because they also start after going through the same ecosystem in the family and the culture, your mother family and then your in-laws family, so they consider is their whole responsibility around it. So I think this will change their mindset too.
And other thing now, this becomes the societal factor of it, aspect of it. Now when you look at the business aspect of the corporates, doesn't matter whether it is manufacturing sector or IT or any other sector. See, when you talk about driving inclusion forward, when you talk about numbers, why the diversity ratios are so less and all, you also need to understand that you need to put money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
You can't just be doing lip service and putting uncomfortable questions to TAs and HRs when the overall setup is not encouraging investments towards running inclusion forward.
True.
Because unless you have money where your mouth is, how the ERGs or passionate individuals will be able to run their initiatives that they want to run. So a lot of these things cannot be measured from the lens of profit, because the balance sheet is very, very black and white. A lot of these things, especially when we talk about diversity and inclusion, just like talent, right?
Yeah.
Can you measure talent in a balance sheet? No.
No.
Can you measure, I know in the interview setup you have marking system and all, but that marking system is based on your analysis of the other person.
True.
And which is not 100% accurate, because you can't really measure everything in terms of numbers.
Correct.
Similarly, then when we talk about driving inclusion forward, encouraging lesser represented groups to be joining the workforce, we also need to ensure that we put our money where our mouth is. Correct. It is not about the balance sheet all the time.
Right. And what I feel, first of all, businesses, whatever the setup it is, they should understand why my team has to be diversified. The
Correct.
need of the diversity. Can you highlight something why businesses, since you are working on a very senior level in a company, why companies should have diversity?
See, now this is where we need to understand maybe couple of examples which have really happened around us, because that will help us understand the product failures when diversity was not leveraged. For example, when safety bags in a car were launched, it was failure because it couldn't protect petite conventional womanly bodies, because in the product life cycle only typical conventional male bodies were leveraged, so that is where it could only protect bigger bodies, it couldn't protect petite bodies. Failure of a product, when the voice recognition system was launched, it failed to recognize conventional feminine voices, because only men with hoarse voices were leveraged in the product life cycle. Face recognition system, when it launched, it branded black people as gorillas. Google Maps. So when Google Maps was launched, let's say for example, we are recording it in the evening, okay, 10 p.m. I want to go back home. I want to use Google Maps. my concern will not be fastest route, my concern will be safest route, safety.
Yes.
That wasn't a feature on Google Maps when it was launched.
Right.
Because maybe some just conventional cisgender men sat together who were obsessed with speed, Formula One, created an algorithm, launched the product, and then realized, oh, that's not the only problem in the society. There are women also who talk about safety, right?
Wow.
This is how diversity influences product life cycle. So it is about anything. When you have diverse, and I always say diversity is not about label. Diversity is about lived experience.
Wow.
Like people तो बोलने के लिए कुछ भी बोल देंगे ना, मैं ये हूँ, मैं वो हूँ, बट अगर वो lived experience ही नहीं है, तुम्हारे ऑथेंटिसिटी नाम के कोई ऑथेंटिसिटी ही नहीं है, तुम जो बात कर रहे हो. यहाँ वहाँ की सुनी बातें सोशल मीडिया पे व्हाट्सएप फॉरवर्ड सुन सुन के आके तुम ओपिनियंस यहाँ पे ला रहे हो. देयर इज नो ऑथेंटिसिटी. दैट इज वाई लिव्ड एक्सपीरियंसेस आर एक्सट्रीमली इंपॉर्टेंट. व्हेन यू हैव दीज डाइवर्स लिव्ड एक्सपीरियंसेस एट द टेबल, that is how you have diverse perspectives which push you to think in various directions. That is why diversity is very important.
But what I feel, ठीक है, diversity भी हो गया, but until unless do you feel when inclusion is not there, diversity makes any sense?
Correct. Very true. करेक्ट. सिंपल एग्जाम्पल, डाइवर्सिटी के टारगेट मीट करने के लिए चलो हायरिंग कर लिया ड्राइव रन करके, 6 मंथ बाद सारे के सारे लोग छोड़ के चले गए.
Because they didn't feel
Correct.
included.
So there cannot be diversity without having inclusion in place and equity in place. Absolutely. So the actual, and this is where the conversation has to be about equity. The conversation has to be about inclusion. So the focus, the primary focus should not be diversity. Primary focus has to be equity and inclusion. That cannot happen without diversity. So unless you have an equitable framework, unless you have equitable policies in framework, number तो हम यूँ meet कर लेंगे.
Correct.
आज I'll put job description on LinkedIn. इतने सारे मुझे profiles आ जाएंगे. I'll pick up the diverse candidate. आ गए. 6 महीने बाद छोड़ के चले गए. Who cares, right? That is why then equity and inclusion has to be the primary focus, because that also pushes me understand what are the gaps. Why did these people leave? मुझे क्या करना चाहिए?
Right.
So that these people don't leave, and I also need to introspect, right? क्यों हुआ ये? जैसे कोची मेट्रो, which is available in public domain, बहुत न्यूज़ में था. Women from transgender community were hired, Hijra community. They gave employment to these women who were lacking skilling, but then 6 months down the line, all of them left. So what was the reason? What went wrong? What can you do to be an enabler? How can you create an equitable framework for these individuals to continue like surviving and thriving? That's what matters. So when the focus is equity and inclusion, the motive is learning, changing and growing.
Wow.
When the focus is diversity, the motive is tick.
Yes.
ये difference.
Inclusion requires real efforts, honest efforts by the organizations.
Like when lip service करनी है, then the motive is diversity. When actual intent है, passion है, deliver करना है, then the motive is inclusion and equity.
Can you just quickly tell me what all are the real steps or the strategies where the organization should follow to create, to make sure that the people should feel inclusive?
Okay.